I didn't think that my Bluetooth speaker was going to let me capture the television audio or the screen audio from the video and then also me, but I guess it did. But either way, I'm going to re-record this. I got cut off on the last screen grab, but these people started to harass me again. It's exactly like I said before. I stopped for about an hour to practice my flute. It's like a new piece, and it's very avant-garde, very like odd, um, exotic trills, and it's a piece called Spiral Lament. And so you sort of, it comes with instructions, so it's like a modern piece. And I was trying to practice it, and as soon as I put the flute down to figure out how to do this really strange turn in the music, because the music, a turn in music, like it's not shown, it's not played as written on the sheet music. It has like, it's like a decoration, or an ornament, and so it's really odd. You have to figure out how to play it. And as soon as I stopped, just like always, they usually do this. What's really disconcerting about these neural monitoring programs is they simply look at intent. They don't even, you don't have to be in the act of doing something. Where I think most people with conventional surveillance, the people surveilling them wait for them to do something on an electronic device. And so you'll start scrolling on a specific website, for instance, and then maybe you'll get hacked, or they'll do a denial of service attack on you, and then you won't be able to reach that site anymore. Well, with me, with neural monitoring, you have real time. There's a government troll um, surveilling everything that you're doing and what you're intending to do in real time. And so, depending on what I'm thinking about or what I'm doing at the moment or what I intend to do, they will react with these stupid sounds. And the it's like I said in the last note. As soon as I started trying to parrot somebody else who was playing the piece, and just to figure out, because again, the sheet music is not written as you're supposed to play it. So I was like, oh, I'll just listen to this guy who I it's the reason why I bought the music in the first place, and then I'll try to parrot them. So I did that pretty successfully, and then immediately after I put the instrument down, you can hear one of them say, "We hate you." Like, it's so stupid. Like, I can't fucking handle these people. They're so fucking ridiculous. It's just stupid. It's a waste of money. It shows you how much of a waste of all your tax money and all the waste that happens. And then when you think of how high the tuition is, there's another video in my playlist um, that deep dives into the how the cost of tuition has inflated by like 1,200%, while the cost of living since I think the 70s or 80s is only like 200 and something percent, 250 or 80%. So something ridiculous like that. It's just sick. Like, and then to think that all of that money then turns into hell scenario, like hell research like mine, where it's just being used to figure out how to control people and how to murder them with plausible deniability. Because don't kid yourself, don't buy into the misnomer non-lethal weapon. And you know, tasers are considered non-lethal, and you see there's millions of dollars in settlement wrongful death lawsuits, especially here in Maricopa County in Arizona. So please don't just latch onto that and think that you're not a psychopathic serial killer. You're literally the definition of a serial killer if you participate in these programs. It doesn't matter how you participate, whether it's just following the target around, whether it's transmitting into the person's house to harass them and elicit responses that get weaponized, or it's accessing the systems that maim the target with uh, radiation exposure. You're a fucking serial killer. You're a genocidal monster. And so let me get back to what I was about to read. So this is an article from 2003. I began going to ASU in 2004, and I suspect that at some point between 2004 and 2015, when Richard Frank Liskovic, professor at Arizona State University, must have been thrown on this program by somebody. So he was already being investigated by the university, um, while he was still teaching there, and he retired early because of it, is what he told me before he died. Is one of the things he would always bring up is just homophobia. Um, and then you look at what I said in the last note, where the types of people that they choose for these programs, marginalized groups, minorities, people who they've managed to galvanize the general public against, Muslims, so that the researchers or the people who participate are completely comfortable maiming and murdering a person slowly, or just surveilling them and trying to just completely eradicating all privacy, because this is the most invasive form of surveillance that exists. It's one thing to hack a phone that I could throw in the trash, and it's another to um, hijack a person's body parts and brain, which again is the reason why you have useful idiots like Donald Trump, who helped to lay the foundation for the legal foundation necessary to get away with biometric surveillance abuse and psychometric, biometric data that gets used to not just sell you things, but try to control you. Um, so, anyways, that's a whole nother. Let me get back in here. Oh, this is this is ASU research take two. Okay, the days of academics pumping their fists in the air to protest covert activity by the CIA during the Vietnam era and into the 1980s are over. Today, as the nation battles terrorism and Iraq, the Central Intelligence Agency is turning more to universities, including Arizona State, to develop high-tech gadgets that track down terrorists and dictators. Universities are cooperating with few objections, partly for patriotic reasons and partly because there's money in government research. Arizona State University President Michael Crow is one of the best leaders in the movement. He has top secret clearance and is on the board of directors for a nonprofit group funded by the CIA to seek out the latest James Bond-like technology for spy work. Crow arrived at ASU's campus last summer, and the students and professors say they already see more emphasis on government research on campus. The more friendly relationship between academics and the CIA is troubling. Development now in play at universities around the country, said David Gibbs, a University of Arizona political scientist and critic of the CIA research on campuses. Academia is supposed to promote open thought, he said. The CIA isn't an ordinary government agency, he said. It's an espionage agency, and the norms of espionage include secrecy and propaganda. There's little outcry on ASU's campus. Biology senior Elizabeth Venable passed out flyers that declared "Say No to Crow" and the CIA at a Thursday conference at ASU, but few people on campus know or care about Crow's affiliation, said political science graduate Chris Lundry. I'm suspicious, said Lundry, who helped organize a small protest last fall against CIA recruiters on campus. The CIA is an organization that specializes in misinformation and disinformation, essentially not telling the truth, he said in the 1960s. He pointed out that the CIA aided Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party. Crow argues that his group, called In-Q-Tel, is open about the research it seeks out from businesses and universities. ASU, he said, will not host classified research. Crow began, you give it to a third-party military contractor and they'll do all of the dirty work for you, but even if they did host classified research, I have another one for that too. Let me just click on that really quick. Let me go back one and go in here really quick. I have a really good one here called Secret Service Crimes in regards to why you would use a public university for classified research. Let me go in here really quick.
Things like, the intelligence agencies are, really professional people. They would never do such a thing. When at that point, you just refer them to the archives, maybe to the declassified archives, and you say, okay, let's go through the list every decade of the 20th century, and let's look at the abuses, and I bet you, I'm not the most informed because frankly, I'm up to here with the intelligence agencies, but you can do the exercise yourself. I just quickly scanned and put together all the stuff that I, could find very quickly. So starting in the 1930s, say, because I didn't really have, any time nor inclination to try to trawl the net or libraries for information going further back. But in the 1930s, I remind you, we had the Gestapo, right? That wasn't very nice. Meanwhile, in the US, they had the Tuskegee experiments, where they, I think this is how it's pronounced, right? Tuskegee? Where they, as I understand it, were infecting black men with syphilis and then watched them degrade as part of this illness. But they infected them on purpose with syphilis. How sick is that? In the 1940s, we had the Gestapo really going properly nuts. And then in, I think already in the US, they had MK Ultra. They also had Project Paperclip, where they took all the Nazi scientists and brought them to the US. But then also they infected 400 prisoners with malaria in the US. And the Nazis at the Nuremberg trials cited these experiments done in the US in defense of their own experiments. So it's like, okay, we're Nazis, but look at those Nazis. Why is it okay if they're doing it? It's like, pots and kettles. They are all messed up in the head. That's the point. 1950s, we had the Stasi, right, in East Germany. And we also had the continuation of MK Ultra and COINTELPRO, and the covert spreading of biological agents in US cities for weapons testing. In the 1960s, we had the Stasi. They had MK Ultra and COINTELPRO, and they also had MK Ultra and stuff like that in the UK. In the 1970s, they still have the Stasi. In Germany, they have MK Ultra and COINTELPRO still going, and MK Ultra in Britain, and others and similar, pretty much the same experiments really that were done in the US. 1980s, you're still the Stasi. You have still MK Ultra and COINTELPRO, but now, as we found out, they are now kind of follow-on programs where people were, the official government program was stopped, and instead it was passed to contractors, so people, if they got sacked, they formed companies and continued the same stuff, as it seems to be the case. Please look into this and research, but we now have public statements from US intelligence agents saying, yeah, no, these projects were never stopped. Then in the 1990s, we still have these follow-on programs, continuing, actually ramping up, and all this satellite stuff, and maybe that was already around in the 1980s, I have no idea, but certainly this sort of weapons testing with satellites. And
in the 1980s, we had the Strategic Defense Initiative satellites, Reagan, Star Wars or something like that, or Stargate.
Then in the 2000s,
fucked up Nazi shit.
I would say this MK Ultra and COINTELPRO Stasi-style stalking never stopped. That's what I would say. But it kind of got toned down and, was made to disappear off the radar for a bit. But then in the early 2000s, we had the torture and extraordinary rendition programs. Then we heard about mass surveillance. Well, mass surveillance we already had in the 1990s. And now we're in the 2010s, and what the victims are claiming is that we have essentially COINTELPRO, MK Ultra, the satellite system, and mass surveillance. Are you surprised? We had it every freaking decade since the 1930s. What the fuck is so surprising? Nothing. It's just a continuation. It's essentially, you've got these intelligence agencies full of just utterly messed up in the head psychopaths doing the same old shit over and over and over. Oh, what would it be like to control the human mind? What would it be like to control other people? Just classic psychopath. Oh yeah, let's really disconcert them, destroy them psychologically like the Stasi and COINTELPRO. Oh yeah, let's destroy their financial life, their social life, their financial life. Let's destroy their marriage. Let's destroy their health. It's the same crap. Really, it is the same freaking crap. It's like saying, a serial killer like Jack the Ripper in the 19th century say, oh my god, that was so sick. Yeah, well, we still have serial killers doing the same stuff. It's the same stuff. And now the only difference is that these serial killers are in government employment, doing the same stuff. And nothing has been put into place to actually stop them doing this. So what do you think will happen? If you have Jack the Ripper literally under the Official Secrets Act, and what do you expect to happen? like Harold Shipman, who's been said to have killed like 300 people. After you've killed 100 people, what do you expect to happen next? Like, what the fuck do you expect? Unless you do something, it will continue just like that. So, we have literally all these documented programs, MK Ultra and COINTELPRO and the Stasi, Zersetzung, going for decades. Then they go silent briefly, and then people say, oh, it seems to be the Stasi, Zersetzung, COINTELPRO and MK Ultra, and people are like, no, they would never do such a thing. Hey, they've been doing the same thing for since they were born as an organization. So, okay, please don't ask this question again. I hope this is not clear. Okay, then a very good question is, have they nothing better to do? And I would say, no. I think this is their job. I think this is what they are there for. That's why it's secret. Because if it was all kosher or all okay or all halal or whatever you want to call it, then it wouldn't have to be secret. Do you see? So as soon as you've got a secret service, you've got a criminal service. You see, it's just that putting, like the criminal intelligence service, it just doesn't sound the same. So they say the secret intelligence service. But this is what it essentially means. The secret services are the criminal services. They are the services, provided to governments and cartels doing the criminal stuff. And essentially what this battle is, the victim saying, we really want these criminals stopped now. I guess what all the victims, and I think everybody who's got their head screwed on in society, should be saying is that in the 21st century, after now, we can go on trying to conquer each other's countries, or we could just shut these criminals down. Maybe we could just have a police force, a publicly accountable anti-terrorism unit, or we could just call it like organized crime unit, publicly accountable, and we could all do away with the secret services, because as soon as a country has got a secret service, it is signaling it has a criminal service. We provide criminal services. If they weren't criminal, they wouldn't have to be secret. And whatever these people are doing, it's going to be criminal. Because if it's just a normal police force and they think you're doing something criminal, then okay, they might be able to just survey you for some time. If it's publicly accountable, fair enough. End of story. Why do you need a secret service? And then you realize that any sort of espionage always will be somehow getting hold of the intellectual property of other countries. And then you can say, yeah, but you need the secret service because another country might be like developing weapons that you don't keep up with. Actually, there's a systems analysis argument to say that the fastest development, the most resilient, and the most, really, but it's about speed. So the fastest development is really the transparent development. Because then everybody's got the same information, it's all transparent, and then everybody can contribute to just kicking the ball a bit further. So public development, unless they are really ginormous, I'm using ginormous again, massive monetary imbalances, publicly, no copyright, just open, free, add to it as you like, and copy and replicate and make better as you like sort of development is actually the fastest, the cheapest, and the most competitive. And I think I can show that also using systems analysis. The reason why, for example, the arms industry and the space races and stuff like that seem to be just so ahead of time is because the actual money pumped into them is by a large margin, by a by orders of magnitude more than what's pumped into public research. And that's why it seems that, these sort of things are so much more advanced, and secret development is so much more advanced. It isn't. Literally, if 9 billion people can contribute, and you just always say, this is where we're up to, can you take it further? And then, okay, you do this, I do this, we make everything public, so that as you have the ideas, you can add to my project, your project. That's actually the quickest way to do things. But currently we have the situation that these countries are all stuck in the old paradigm, and they're like, oh, no, they are actually, they are developing weapons, so we have to develop our weapons in secret. And actually, What's going to happen is, because every country knows that a secret development is going on, they are spying, watching each other like hawks. And actually, the secret programs to the intelligence agencies are the best known, because that's what they keep like staring at all the time. And I think, I think Vladimir Putin put it really well the other day, when it's like a fairly recent comment, I think maximum a year ago, when he said, well, they know what we know, or they know what we know that they know that we know, and this endless iteration, and we know what they're going to develop next year and the year after, and it's pretty easy to map out this sort of development. So they know about each other's weapons anyway. So why not just make it transparent? Because then we can actually prevent abuses, and everybody could contribute in kind of cushioning the effect of these weapons against illicit use, which would then protect the cartel holders in turn. But this is kind of like a complex reasoning that's, I think, way beyond most arms dealers and most heads of intelligence. But ultimately, this is how it is. So right now, we're with these legacy systems where secrets and actually, the most secret projects are the most watched, by professional saboteurs and intelligence agents. So what the hell? I would maintain that if you've got a shitty, crappy little project in some back door of a university, you've got more chances of it not being known than some top cutting-edge research project, for the arms industry. I think that's just what it's like. But there we go.
So anyways, there's that. And here's more of this article. Crow began working with In-Q-Tel in 1999 when he was still at Columbia University. We see what's going on there. CIA Director George Tenet approached him with a problem, and I'll get into George Tenet here. That's what I was about to do before I noticed my audio was screwed up. Technology at the CIA was far behind the times, Crow said, and methods of tracking terrorists and protecting the homeland from anything from anthrax to computer hackers were rapidly evolving through the world, and the CIA was left out. Keep in mind, the anthrax thing was, I think, a government scientist. He worked in a government lab. So false flag operation again. Tenet assembled a team of about 10 people, including a former Secretary of Defense chairman, large companies, an accomplished inventor, and more. These are all huge heavyweight guys, and then there was little old me, Crow said. I'm this academic who understands how to capture technology and how to invest in technology. Okay, so he's pandering to George Tenet, and I'll go ahead and get into George Tenet here. This is who George Tenet is. Okay, here's a crazy clinical psychopath who denied torture.
CIA Director George Tenet is speaking out to defend the rough treatment of some al-Qaeda suspects, saying it helped snuff out new terror plots and saved American lives. In a 60 Minutes interview with Scott Pelley, Tenet insists no one was tortured.
The image that's been portrayed is we sat around the campfire and said, oh boy, now we go get to torture people. Well, we don't torture people. Let me say that again to you. We don't torture people. Okay.
I would consider people inducing cancer, and not only that. Okay, so there's, I think that if you actually go into battle and you're on, you're on the front lines and you start killing people, you don't want to really kill people. But this is like a special type of psychopath that they indoctrinate into these programs that, literally, they can see if the person can empathize at all, because this will kill you slowly and with harassment and torture. And so there's this weird, they are trying to torture you, they're trying to harass you, stress you out, and microwave you so that you end up dying of cancer from the stress and the free radicals from the radiation, and God knows what kind of other, fucked up shit that they do to you, Ted Gunderson. You watch the Ted Gunderson videos that I also have in my collection, and it's pretty nasty what the government around here will do to you when they want to get rid of you. So
Come on, George. We don't torture people.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed,
We don't torture people.
waterboarding.
We do not, I don't talk about
Torture.
techniques and we don't torture people. No, listen to me. I want you to listen to me. So the context is, it's post 9/11.
yeah, he's a psychopath, and these people are professional. They're professional, and here's this
I
guy.
don't like calling it torture, all right, for one simple reason. Because to call it torture says my guys were torturers, right? And they were told that they
They're so creepy. Like, so there's something incredibly creepy about these guys. Where is the other one? Where they just basically point out how, there you go. Trained liars.
Tonight, but first tonight, Kiriaku's behind-the-scenes perspective on the culture of the CIA, starting with the agency's reaction to the attacks on September 11, 2001.
9/11 really resulted in a terrible collective guilt. You know, I remember policymakers at the time saying we shouldn't be pointing fingers, the Democrats shouldn't blame the Republicans, and the Republicans shouldn't blame the Democrats. Well, the truth is this was a massive intelligence failure. And so
Yeah, I don't know about that. See, for me, now that I know what I know, what is it? How do they put it? Don't let a tragedy go to waste. A good tragedy go to waste. So that's that's what they consider a lot of the target to our, potential, like loose cannons, or just, a Manchurian shooting waiting to happen, mass shooting waiting to happen. They love that. They love to elicit responses that are then used as the excuse to go to war or keep the person surveilled and on these torture programs. Like, I have this here from Reddit. I brought up Karen earlier. Like, this really embodies the type of person that is harassing me. Okay, so imagine this woman here, but with the ability to transmit into your house and harass you, and then also microwave you, follow you around on the road, crash into you, and then when you react to any of that, they do this. Hang on.
You keep lying saying I'm threatening you, so I'm recording to protect myself. Now, crazy lady. Hey, she attacked me and tried to say I attacked her. You come. Look at this. Get away from me! Oh, y'all better get this lady! Get away from me! You got security! Get the fucker! Get security! Look at this. Yes, can y'all get her away from me? Get her away!
Like, do you see that? Like, this whole little scenario really does capture the essence of what the targeting program is. It's they do this, like, they come at you with all these plausibly deniable forms of electronic harassment, these very exotic surveillance systems, and then when you react to them, they run and try to make themselves look like the victim. It's the same. It's a tactic that's trickled all the way down from the military-industrial complex and the CIA, down to the militarized police, then down to all of the new community-based agent trash that you get from InfraGard and Citizens on the Pro. It's like a snitch community. So, like, they're all, and then when you react to it all, because for you as the target, you experience all of the harassment and all of the assault, and they're only delivering like the 1,000 cuts that eventually bleed you dry, and then you react, and then you're the bad guy. This is who I'm dealing with here, except with government clearance and the assistance of weaponized, ignorant police, complicit or ignorant FBI where state secrecy trumps anything, including exotic forms of murder and harassment and stalking.
I got to just protect myself. She's trying to attack me. No, no, no.
Stop threatening me!
See, and she's saying I'm threatening her. I'm not saying nothing to her. It's to protect me. Once the law get here, who they gonna believe? Her white ass or my black ass?
Yeah. So, and they do use, they love using it. They do use specific demographics. It's all about optics. So they're going to use the old woman like they did in the neighborhood where this started happening to me in Tempe, the old white woman who's going to run around and say, oh, something's going on there in that house. And nothing's going on in there that no ordinary adult wouldn't do if they thought they had. When you have an expectation of privacy in your own house as a fucking grown man, where your name is on the deed, you have no mortgage, you're not hurting anyone else, like, there's nothing that I've ever done that justifies this form of harassment. I'm a threat to these people, and my biggest crime is just figuring it all out. That is so fucking threatening to these pieces of shit. And it feels like they were emboldened from 2016 on because of the fascist administration, the fascism, the just blatant fascism that you saw during the Trump administration. And I'm not trying to play the political one side of the aisle or the other. The Democratic and the Republican parties to me are two sides of the same greasy, fucked up coin. Like, I don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. I don't think we've had a real president, since Eisenhower, maybe even, like, it's always perfectly, like, groomed, hand-chosen people that are going to end up pandering to the military-industrial complex. We're a military economy. And so anyways, going off on a tangent,
we inside the CIA felt that it was our fault. We should have been able to find.
And I hate to make blanket statements, but then I always wonder every time I see people like this, all of them, including Snowden and all of them, this is how I just don't trust anything anymore. And I'm like, okay, is this just another limited hangout? Is this the type of person who is potentially the type of clinical psychopath that you would indoctrinate into these programs and into these agencies because they're willing to do time for their country? Like, oh yeah, I'll make it look like I spoke out and I was critical against this agency when in fact you're just participating. And I'm not saying that specifically about him, but you never know. Like, that's the type of psychopath that they use. Somebody like to a psychopath, prison just comes with the territory. Like, if you're a criminal, like, it wouldn't bother you either way. You realize that you might be going to prison, and then they don't care. They're psychopaths. They don't care.
These guys overseas, we should have been able to disrupt the attack. At the very least, we should have worked with the FBI, which we famously didn't. So there was this feeling of collective guilt.
How palpable is that? I mean, if I'm walking around Langley a week after 9/11, 2 weeks after 9/11, I mean, is it?
Most people who were there in the building on 9/11 didn't leave for the first couple of weeks. I slept under my desk for 3 days before somebody told me you really need to go home and take a shower. We even, on the moving into the night of 9/11, toward September 12th, we actually got bolt cutters and cut the lock off of the cafeteria door and stole all the food. It was a Marriott contract. Stole all the food and cooked it ourselves and just placed it on these big tables in the hall so people could eat and not stop working. And that went on for days. We ended up having to write a check for something like $15,000 to the Marriott for stealing all their food. But most people didn't leave, or if they left, it was only to take a shower and change clothes and come back, because we felt like we had to make up for this terrible mistake that we had made and, show that we could make some kind of progress against Al-Qaeda.
I had to ask Kiriakou, given his past as an undercover agent for the CIA, if he is a reliable narrator of history. Before we go further, I gotta ask you this. I've had some experience talking to spooks in my reporting career, and two things have struck me. One is, a lot of them seem a little crazy. And the other thing is, you guys are trained, paid liars.
Yes.
So it's like, why Why should I believe anything you're saying to me now, right? I mean, you literally professionally lied for decades.
Yeah, you're trained to lie. You lie all the time. You lie, you cheat, you steal, you swindle, you trick people. That's the nature of the job. Yes. The problem at the agency oftentimes is that those guys don't know when to turn it off. And as
Do
a
you
result,
know when to turn it off?
Well, I hope that I do. I think that I do. But one of the side effects of that kind of a culture.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have video of that the whole few days after 9/11.
I have an announcement to make. I'm taking a semester off.
Smith, why so glum? The C in CIA doesn't stand for crestfallen. But what if it stood for cat? So what's bothering you?
Haley doesn't want my advice anymore. Sir, I have terrible news. I was just doing the end of the year accounting. We still have money left in our budget. If we don't spend it by the end of the fiscal year, they'll cut our budget for next year.
Damn it, Robertson, speak to me in English.
We have to spend $50,000 by midnight.
Get me everyone.
Everyone?
Everyone!
That's not really my job.
You're right, it's not your job. Inform Lorraine, have her send a mass email. Now, give me a hug.
You scared me.
Well, I feel like that university for the last 25 years has been like a really badly written version of this show. Like, really fucked up. Really fucked up. I'm not even trying to make a joke of it, but it really feels kind of like this. Like, and please don't think that there's not an element of sexual exploitation with these systems. What do you think they do when they can watch you fucking in your own house?
Gentlemen, do whatever it takes to empty our coffers. Lap dances, champagne dances, shower dances. Oh, the things you can buy with a handful of bills. It makes me excited. It gives me the chills. There'll be filcherons, breeders, hambones and tweeters, zobos and devos and blorps that go Ena. For a $1 bill, you can pull down their zippers. I am the Snorlax. I speak for the strippers.
Anyways, let me see here. Yeah, professional
Is that the
bullshitters.
agency has what is probably the highest divorce rate in all of the federal government. And it's because you have officers who lie all day long and then go home and lie to their wives about their girlfriends or about what they're doing, and things fall apart. One senior officer who had retired and then come back as a trainer told me one time, you can lie all day, but never lie to your boss and never lie to your wife. And getting back to your original point about people being kooky, a CIA psychiatrist once told me that when the CIA is looking to hire people, they're looking for people with what he called sociopathic tendencies. Not sociopaths, but people with sociopathic tendencies. That is, people who are comfortable working in moral gray areas and who are comfortable lying and doing it with a smile. With that said, oftentimes sociopaths will slip through the cracks because sociopaths can very easily pass a polygraph exam. They have no conscience, after all. And so sometimes you get people who really probably shouldn't be working there.
Yeah, so let's see, what else was I gonna go over here? There's that. That's why my God. So when I brought this kind of stuff up to the Tempe Police Department, they redacted it from the generic police reports. And so what you do is you call multiple times and then you force some version of this to show up on your police reports, and that way later on down the line, when everyone starts figuring everything out, you can go after them for negligent homicide or for just negligence in general. Like, what's the Dahmer case that happened where one of the victims sued the city for equal protection under the law. So it was a civil rights offense, which is again why it's important for me to upload these videos in the hopes that the trash who doesn't fuck off understands who they're dealing with while they continue to harass me with these stupid systems that you cannot deny exist anymore. I don't care how dumbed down the general public is. This is a reality. This is a real form of abuse, and the universities have been complicit for decades. And again, like I said, a lot of what's being done to me revolves around humiliation. So here's, I think this is Harvard.
And he always wore a three-piece tweed suit, very elegant. What I didn't know, what we didn't know, was that that Henry was doing the LSD experiments. Was doing these the TAT work, but we didn't know that he was doing other kinds of experiments, not involving LSD, other kinds of experiments involving essentially humiliation. So it turns out that Ted Kaczynski, who was the Unabomber, this fellow who sent letter bombs to computer scientists a number of years ago and is now in prison for life, Ted Kaczynski was a Harvard undergraduate in the late 1950s who was in a humiliation experiment that Henry Murray ran. Not saying that Harvard turned Ted Kaczynski psychotic, although I've heard that can happen up there. But what is the case is that Murray was very interested, as many people were, in how you could kind of decenter somebody, tear away layers of their personality, and interested in how humiliation could be useful as a kind of a way of interrogating somebody. So, interesting connection here. Not interesting.
I think that's part of the reason why they gravitate towards gay men. There's a documentary I saw about a year ago, and they were talking about how in the concentration camps, nobody got shit on more than the gay men, because not only were they being singled out and harassed by the guards, the Nazis, but also within the other prisoners. And so you're like marginalized within a marginalized community, and so it makes it easier for you to be dehumanized. And there's also another element. I often say there's a special place in hell for any of the people that are participating in these programs in any capacity who are minorities in any way. So if you're LGBTQ, if you are part of any minority group who's been disproportionately affected by policing and surveillance, and then you decide to participate in these programs, there's like a special place in hell for you. Like, you're an idiot who's now all the years of struggle for the civil rights that we're losing, that are getting peeled away again, you're kind of sending us backwards. But they don't see it that way. There is also an element, what I was getting at, is that there's also an element of sexual exploitation. And so I think that gay men in particular, because they may take more liberties with their own bodies and sex lives than their heterosexual counterparts, it is an opportunity for these people to use humiliation while they surveil you so invasively. So, I mean, when this went overt with me, I started turning off my phone all the time. My phone, my Wi-Fi, all of it, because I didn't know that you could use through-the-wall surveillance systems and still see everything even though you have everything off. And that's what these systems are meant to do too. These systems are meant for people who want to live off the grid. There's no such thing as living off the grid anymore. Like I said, I haven't tried throwing myself into a cave yet. The La Cueva de las Golondrinas in Mexico might be, maybe that's like the only space on Earth where you can actually disconnect from this. Like, I haven't been disconnected from the system in tens of thousands of hours. I'm sure I'm going to die of cancer. I already have thyroid problems. It's just a matter of time before I get diagnosed with some kind of terminal disease, just like my friend. And so that's why I'm making these videos too. People need to understand what kind of surveillance abuses are currently going on and their origins. And if you're a target who runs into my channel, you need to know that go look at what kind of research is being conducted at your local public university. Go and it's not like these systems are limited to a specific place. They can choose people all over the place. But you might fall under their radar, no pun intended. You're more likely to fall under their radar if you did attend one of these schools, one of these universities who's being heavily funded by people. So there's a bunch of spooks running around the university. There's a bunch of people who want to play James Bond too, law enforcement, the researchers. They want to feel like they're part of that whole world, like, oh, James Bond and blah, blah, blah. Get the fuck out of here. You're just it's just another piece of shit in another pile in another time, but it's another throwback from history. So
also to point out that,
but this whole video here that's also included in my playlist, the Military Industrial Academic Complex, is it's very telling. Like, everything in here that he brings up is incredibly, you can see you could draw so many parallels as a targeted individual from just the research that he brings up from different universities in this
apparently
playlist.
Henry only published one paper
in
about
this video specifically.
So he didn't give a lot of detail actually about the study or the nature of the subjects. Another example in the world of psychology and behavioral science, Kurt Lewin, who should be known to you, his name at least should be known to you, as the founder of social psychology. He also was an OSS advisor on psychological warfare. One political scientist estimated that perhaps a third of major research university faculty were supported by security agencies after World War II. So this was not unusual at all, and it was actually quite a part of the culture. I don't know how many of you here are watching the video, know the work of J.B. Ryan at Duke. But Duke...
Anyways, I'm not going to go over the whole video, but where's another one to bring up? Here's DARPA. I mean, this is a recent one with, this one's got In-Q-Tel in it, how much money they give them. In 2017, one of these people mentioned how, and I'm quoting them directly, quote, "We don't care how much you figure out, we've got $3 million, is what they said. That's exactly what they said. And then later in 2018, they said, now we have like $6 million, 6.8 million is what they said. So, but that's what they said in 2017 as I'm selling off my house so that I could try to escape this, not knowing that this would follow me to another state, 980 miles away. And then I watched this video here with George Hoyam, where they talk about In-Q-Tel and how much they give people. Well, something to the tune of between $0 and $4 million. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of sus. Here's DARPA bringing up the work of Dr. Ross Addy. If you watch this and you're still not convinced.
Introducing eUnga, the non-lethal self-defense platform. Lightweight and simple to use. It uses
March 16th, 2018. The U.S. government's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, commonly known as DARPA, announces a bold initiative to develop what they call next-generation non-surgical neurotechnology. It is designed to allow the human brain...
See how they have all this really dumb B-roll where they insist on showing the person with leads on their scalp? Just maybe the editor, as they were weaving together the video, or the media, they were like, oh, we need something that says, brain research, and they're all brainwashed by Hollywood, and it's, decades of, they're in bed with the CIA, and so you see movies like Total Recall and what's the other one? Minority Report. And you think, oh, they have to have something on their head for this to work. This is why I show Dina Katabi's work. You don't need any peripheral devices on you for this to work. These systems are capable of using machine learning algorithms that clean up all of the signal noise in the environment and hone in right into your subtle nervous system. All of it. Like everything. Not just your reflections from your body being made of water to the field of radiation hitting you to surveil you and watch your position on a map, but also being able to pull out EEG information, so electroencephalograph information that used to be limited to an EEG. So you can see all of this now without any leads on your scalp. But again, you need to be dumbed down, and so this is why when they present limited hangout media, they show all this B-roll. This is a Leda machine, I think.
Directly interface with machines.
We know that DARPA is exploring human-machine interfaces that include direct connections between the brain and outside systems. That's been from the beginning of DARPA's information technology mission, and it continues to this day. DARPA has created some of the most influential technologies of all time, things that we use and take for granted every day, including the project that became the internet. They've created self-driving cars, stealth.
Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior. The project reportedly ended in 1969, but DARPA's investigation of how machines can affect and possibly control the brain continues to this day.
Anyways, there's that. It's just loaded with them. What else did I want to show on this? This. Of course, this one from the study where
Real estate or crypto are the best passive income. Say good morning. We're on a road trip.
Good morning.
Yeah.
On our way. I haven't really been sleeping that well, but we're gonna make it anyway.
Oh, it's early for us.
I'm already tired, but it's time to wake up.
So we're on a road trip. We're working on a big project. And so that's why we're not gonna have the news show probably for the next couple weeks, because we're actually out of the office on a big project. But anyway, to that end, this will give you a little hint on what we're looking into, I guess. I've been reading this book here, Cross Currents, The Perils of Electromagnetic Pollution, by Dr. Robert Becker. He's actually got another one called The Body Electric, very good. But it's interesting because he's talking about the effects of microwaves in here and how microwave radiation really wasn't a thing in our environment this prevalent until after World War II, and they figured out they could use it for radar and communications and stuff like that. But all of the studies that they did were short term, so they didn't see what the effects were of the non-ionizing radiation. And then all of the studies, pretty much from the 50s on, were funded in large part by the military. And so the results that came out ended up jiving with the military stance on how non-ionizing radiation is fine, basically. And if you came out and said that it wasn't, you were ostracized and your funding was pulled. But even with that, there were studies coming out in the 70s from other countries that clearly showed that there was direct damage to nerve elements of the retina, for example.
Oh, there's Carnegie
And
Mellon.
this just went on throughout the years, that it showed different types of damage. And the safety standard.
So you would think that if somebody from a university was introducing this form of technology to the public through people like me, that they might not want to introduce it with torture, but that's exactly what's happening here. Just like they introduced splitting the atom with a nuclear bomb, it's the same thing with this. It's the same thing, which consequently is I think that's one of the laws that are being broken here. Section USC Section 832, participation, the use of weapons of mass destruction. It's Section 2332A, Part C, use of weapons of mass destruction. I would consider what's being used on me a weapon of mass destruction, in that having the ability to surveil the human mind this way, you know, you could pluck just about any information out from anyone's head or anyone's devices, and use it to do a lot of damaging things. And so that's why that even though the radiation itself takes a long time to kill you, it's what you can gain from what you see through these surveillance systems that makes it a potential weapon of mass destruction, which is why it blows my mind, no pun intended, that they would allow these systems to fall in the hands of such irresponsible trash. And not only that, create liabilities through the indoctrination of civilians that are just complete morons. But that's just where we are, you know.
All that, the stuff that they did, it was all basically government.
These are the innovative decisions being made by,
if you know what I mean. And then in the 1980s, the Air Force did this $5 million experiment. It was supposed to be the big experiment, the be-all, end-all experiment. It was funded by the Air Force to show that this microwaves, even at very large levels of like 2.45 gigahertz, are fine and not going to cause any problem. And what's interesting about it is they spent $5 million and they did it with this notobiotic rats, which is a term meaning germ and virus free. Now, unless you were born in a cesarean section and then kept in sterile conditions your whole life and lived in one of those plastic bubbles like Bubble Boy, you're not going to be notobiotic. So the conditions of the study right from the onset were rigged, basically, with this $5 million. In fact, that's why it cost so much, because they had to buy these fancy rats to do it, which is kind of ridiculous. And it seems to me that they set it all up with those rats in the hopes that it would show everything was fine. But guess what? It didn't show that. What it actually showed was 18 of the rats that were exposed to the microwaves ended up with cancer, versus only 5 in the control group. And then they tried to pull that crap about how we-star rats always get cancer anyway, which just begs the question of why would you do a study with rats that you know are going to get cancer anyway? This kind of makes the whole study pointless. They say that with GMOs and other stuff too. Oh, well, those rats always get cancer. Well, then why'd you do the study? Kind of makes you a moron. Like, this is ridiculous. But anyway, so they had these fancy rats, Bubble Boy rats, and 18 of them got cancer anyway. And guess where the cancer was? The cancer was primarily in the adrenal glands, the thyroid, and the pituitary gland. Nowhere else. That should tell you something. In fact, I say that tells you a lot more than anything, that even though they had the fancy Bubble Boy rats, the rats still got freaking cancer. A lot of them. Okay? But they tried to push this off in Scientific American, and this is just great. And it shows that non-ionizing radiation has no health effects. And it's pretty freaking ridiculous. So, I mean, the military-industrial complex is there to ensure that the military-industrial complex will continue going. And whatever they have to do to keep that happening, they will fund that and make that happen. It's kind of like cancer charities. They have no reason to try and cure cancer and cure themselves out of existence. Well, it's kind of the same thing with the military. But we are now being exposed to 1 million times the microwave radiation in our environment over 30 years ago. And all of the science going back 60 years that says that this is okay for you is tied to the military-industrial complex and the government, who needs it to be okay for you. Okay?
I'm going to go ahead and end this one the way I meant to end it earlier. I think this is the one. Oh, okay, yeah, this is the one. This was written by another target. Let me just get in really nice and close in case you're staring at the screen and you got this far. Notice of crimes against humanity using energy and neuro/bioweapons. Notice of criminal trespass. Notice of theft of intellectual property, and notice of impending criminal charges. Notice to one is notice to all. Reissued October 28th, 2019. Originally posted August 28th, 2017. The prohibition of crimes against humanity, similar to the prohibition of genocide, has been considered a preemptory norm of international law from which no derogation is permitted and which is applicable in all states. United Nations Office on Genocide Prevention and Responsibility to Protect. By this notice dated the 28th of October 2019, let it be known to all individuals, groups, corporations, agencies, organizations, foundations, governments, militaries, and citizens worldwide and in every nation state that 1. According to Article 7 of the 1998 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, which established the International Criminal Court and constitutes the primary treaty and, quote, latest consensus from the international community on this matter, the full text of which may be found online at the United Nations Genocide Prevention website and elsewhere, is enclosed herein. A. The following crimes which are being committed today by individual, group, and corporate members and veterans of militaries, defense departments, defense/secretary contractors, Air Force and Army bases, justice departments, intelligence/security agencies, intelligence/security contractors, law enforcement departments, fusion center organizations, bureaus of investigation, citizen watch and neighborhood watch groups, community-oriented police programs, university, quote, researchers, and random citizens in neighborhood communities and places of employment recruited to assist in programs to covertly target, surveil, stalk, gang stalk, swarm, gaslight, vandalize, sabotage, and assault select victims with 1. With electromagnetic radiation, pulse microwaves, Wi-Fi radio frequency signals sent to non-consensual RF implants, sonic pulses and ionizing radiation using sonic weapons, neuro weapons, portable directed energy weapons, cell phones, apps on cell phones, and other means of transmitting carcinogenic radiation, all in the guise of surveillance programs, experimentation programs and neuroexperimentation programs, behavior modification programs, behavior intervention programs, predictive policing programs, criminal justice programs, pre-crime programs, medical monitoring programs, public safety programs, social engineering programs, countering violent extremism programs, and other means of hiding these deadly programs of sadistic and brutal assault under secrecy, classification for national security, biomedical and behavioral intervention, public safety, legitimate and legal military/intelligence experimentation, and criminal justice covers, and conducted as state-sponsored legal domestic counter terrorism/surveillance proliferation / counterintelligence suppression pacification activities on the whole swathes of civilization populations in towns, cities, states, and regions with full knowledge of the attack are intentionally understood to be crimes against humanity and include 1. Enslavement, in this case, electronic enslavement by virtue of continuous clandestine tracking and locating via non-consensually implanted tracking microchips. I don't believe that that's happening to me. You don't need anything as outlined by Dina Katabi. Biomems, nanochips, you don't need any of those as demonstrated by Dr. Dina Katabi, and or brain print and brain bioresonance frequencies and GPS, GIS tracking satellites, continuous electronic surveillance or assault with electromagnetic radiation, punitive physical and neural assault with electronic weapons, continuous audio and video surveillance with planted bugs and recordings and tracking devices in homes and vehicles. 2. Imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law, in this case, electronic imprisonment by virtue of severe encroachment and criminal trespass into homes and into bodies and brains with the use of electromagnetic radiation / sonics and continually or periodically applied. Torture, in this case, electronic torture by virtue of assault, remote bodily access and manipulation, regular sleep deprivation, injection of synthetic dreams, images, voices, sensations, remote electroshocking, remote electric vibrations, remote neuro takeover, biohacking and biorobotizing, all induced with electromagnetic weapons, sonic weapons, neuro weapons, biocommunication devices such as implants and transponders, BCIs or brain-to-computer interfaces, and other weapons facilitating covert or clandestine assault, Article 7F. Rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity. In this case, electronic rape, electronic sex trafficking, electronic sexual slavery, electronic sexual violence, and electronic enforced sterilization, by virtue of sexual assault and violence aimed at the private reproductory and urogenital systems of women, young girls, men, and young boys, conducted remotely at a distance using radiation weapons, sonic weapons, and non-consensually implanted microchips, neurostimulators, transponders, and wireless body area networks. 5. Persecution on other grounds universally recognized as impermissible under international law, in this case, electronic persecution by virtue of continuous assault and torture with electromagnetic weapons, remote bodily manipulation, remote brain and bodily control, remote EEG cloning and heterodyning, imposing others' brain's frequencies on one, permitting partial or full body neuro takeover, remote cerebral trauma, all induced with weapons named above. 2. Psychological persecution by virtue of subjecting individuals to nonstop electromagnetic tracking and assault, nonstop physical stress creation, nonstop sensory stimulation, forced disruption of activities, nonstop sleep deprivation, nonstop COINTELPRO stalking, swarming, interrogation, vandalism, break-ins, gaslighting, employment sabotage, character ruination, social isolation, slander and defamation, public mockery, and street theater. 6. Enforced disappearance of persons, in this case sabotage and ruination of individuals' businesses, reputations, and character assassinations by virtue of dissemination of lies, slander, libelous, and defamatory statements about individuals within their own neighborhoods, work and life communities, areas and cities of residence and employment, often rendering individuals homeless, jobless, blacklisted, and unemployable. Other inhumane acts of a similar character intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or mental and physical health, in this case remote body and brain access, manipulation, and assault using electronic weapons described above, and affecting bio/neurohacking and the theft of personal intellectual property, one's brainwaves, whether thought, emotion, sensation, memory, intention, cognition, mentation, inner voice, and or other. Biorobotizing, which is essentially the neural takeover of a person's brain and manipulating a person's limbs, organs, joints, and entire body from outside. Continuous psychological, mental, and internal torture via voice-to-skull, synthetic telepathy, running abusive monologues inside individuals' brains, an intrinsic aspect of trauma-based mind control, and prelude to biorobotizing. Continuous psychological and social trauma caused by nonstop assault of individuals with psyops to find inputs related to the individual's life, picked up by intensive surveillance, including neurosurveillance. And the very act of trauma-based mind control, which is the effecting of remote control of people's brains and bodily movements and behaviors by inflicting physical and psychological trauma on them. To repeat these acts of extreme remote brain and body access, assault and manipulation are internationally understood as per Article 7 of the 1998 Rome Statute of the ICC, and understood by all seeking to investigate and prosecute those committing these crimes to be crimes against humanity. These crimes are currently being investigated, and all those committing these crimes are being monitored. All individuals, groups, and corporate members and veterans of militaries, defense departments, defense/security contractors, Air Force and Army bases, justice departments, intelligence/security agencies, intelligence/security contractors, law enforcement departments, fusion center organizations, bureaus of investigation, citizen watch and neighborhood watch groups, community-oriented policing programs, university researchers, and random citizens in neighborhoods and communities and places of employment recruited to assist in the performance of these crimes against humanity on the bodies of selected individuals, presented deceptively by nation, state, and military authorities of any kind as legitimate or lawful or legal targets of surveillance. Monitoring, investigation, or experimentation are liable to being monitored by name, place of residence, place of employment, occupation, and association. To determine connection with military/intelligence/law enforcement/neighborhood watch/community-oriented policing program, if any. 3. These crimes will be prosecuted in the International Criminal Court in the courts of common law and in new. Incorruptible people's courts and tribunals will be focused on addressing crimes against humanity. Every single person or entity participating in these crimes in the smallest way, whether by pointing a cell phone, issuing a Wi-Fi signal at a human being identified to them as a legitimate target or a test subject, using an app on a cell phone to direct deadly radiation on such an identified human being via the global electronic control grid using cell towers, satellites, drones, sensors, air, space, ground, base, and mobile tracking systems, sensing and transmitting platforms, or using a portable directed energy weapon or antenna system or transducer handed to them by any, quote, authority, organization such as a defense contractor, military branch, Air Force base, intelligence agency, security agency, law enforcement agency, investigative agency, neighborhood watch group, community-oriented policing program is liable to being monitored and will be documented by name and photographic and or audio-video record. Participants in these crimes, deceptively termed legal, are hereby informed that they are participating in actuality in the crimes of non-consensual rape, sex trafficking, sex assault, enslavement, imprisonment, torture, sexual slavery, persecution, enforced disappearance, biohacking, biocommunications, neurohacking, psychological trauma, physical trauma, assault, and criminal bodily trespass, all of which are crimes against humanity as described above. Participants in these crimes are also hereby informed that the crimes against humanity they are recruited into performing, whether conducted and protected under cover of, quote, national security, in protection of the homeland, legitimate military/criminal justice experimentation, research projects, socio-behavior research, social engineering, or legitimate investigation are still and primarily crimes against humanity and will be prosecuted as such. Participants in these crimes against humanity, whether salaried employee of an organization as described above, or paid/unpaid community volunteer, can both anticipate criminal charges, continuous written photographic, audio, and videographic documentation of their actions and words, and open publication at any time online and otherwise of their names, photographs, audio/video recordings, and places of residence and employment. Endorsed, Romola Demiraj, journalist and author. Karen Melton Stewart, retired NSA. Dr. Millicent Black, pastor and researcher, advocate, doctorate, Christian education of social justice. Melanie Vershan, founder and president of ICATOR, or the International Coalition Against Electronic Torture and Robotization of Living Beings. Thomas McFarland, journalist, visual artist, and innate psychology course. Cassandra, citizen journalist, EFL/ESL teacher. Please post widely in every nation of the world for the protection of all humanity. So, had that one a long time ago, but I thought this might be a good spot to put that since I'm making this one public. Again, I don't know what makes these people so comfortable, after all this time, still doing this to me. Like, when you lose the luxury of anonymity, that's your cue to fuck off and leave me alone, but they don't care. It's like I said, they have decades of literally getting away with murder, and they lean on each other. There's a group mob mentality that you get from these the participants in these programs. They don't care. They feel like they're all good, but I'm sure the Romola's letter, falls on deaf ears. You can still hear these people. I still hear the high-pitched squeal. If I was gonna invite somebody over, they chickened out, or they just didn't want to deal with this, which I don't blame them. But it doesn't matter what time of day it is or when it is. If you are anywhere near this house, or if you're in the house while I'm in the house, you'll hear this high-pitched squeal. It's still there. You'll hear the banter. They call it voice to skull, but it's not voice to skull. It is a transmission that anyone in the house could hear. You can hear it. It's very subtle, but it's loud enough for me to hear. I have really good ears. It's really annoying. It's massive, and it's the most invasive form of surveillance that exists, biometric surveillance that exists. So, that's it. I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There is a playlist from, where is that? Subscriptions. Let me go in here. Where is it? There we go. So this is another target here, and I brought it up in another video. They have a really good, he has a really good video in here. This one, it's called Deadly Experiments. It's a really old documentary where they go over a lot of really old research and just the type of creepy people that they had in these programs.
They were vital to the project, and management were deeply concerned that some of their most important, crucial people would become overexposed with plutonium and might suffer some sort of serious health consequences. They were vital to the project, and they didn't want them put out of commission.
The scientists decided the only way to find out how plutonium behaved in the body was to experiment on humans. They chose to inject hospital patients, a decision condemned by doctors who have studied the experiments.
The researchers themselves didn't make the sacrifice. They didn't inject themselves. They didn't inject their children. They didn't inject their wives. They didn't do that. They decided to pick these unsuspecting civilian victims who were generally uneducated and minority.
Yeah, that's what's hilarious to me. So, the sound of regret that I get from Karen is just like, it feeds me. Like, they used to say things like, oh, we didn't think you'd figure it out. So these people made the decision to do this to me based on a sliver of my life when I inherited a house and I indulged myself in that house where I didn't have shit to do. I had money, I had no mortgage, and I was like, I'm gonna enjoy myself. And they decided to take that one tiny sliver of my life where I was enjoying myself and use it as the superficial criteria to go ahead and feel comfortable taking my brain. And again, that's that part of their brain that I think has been just like bred out for that, so that they can't recognize boundaries. Like they cross the line all the time, century after century, decade after decade. Like they don't ever learn. It's the same shit. So when I see them talk about, oh, uneducated, like easy targets, basically, that's how they looked at me. So they judged me based on a lot of really superficial criteria, and now it's coming back to bite them in the ass.
And Shaw was severely ill with leukemia. He was injected with almost 3 times the supposed safe dose of plutonium. He died 8 months later. Ida Schultz-Charlton had hepatitis. She got 5 times the safe dose. And Albert Stevens was injected with 90 times the tolerance dose of plutonium. But sometimes the cancers caused by plutonium can take decades to appear. And like half of the subjects, Albert survived for years afterwards.
None of these people were harmed. None of them who died, 20, 25, 30 years after the event, showed any sign.
It feels like they need you. Part of the reason why they strip your assets and make your life so difficult is and harass you 24 hours a day is because they need you to look like you're the reason why your life got fucked up. Like they desperately need to pass the buck to anyone other than what they're doing to you, even though what they're doing to you is pretty much the most invasive, fucked up thing you could do to a person. Like when your thyroid goes out, they call it the master gland for a reason. So it affects everything else. Your testosterone, you have to do extra things for your testosterone. When you eat, you get brain fog. You gain a lot of weight or you lose a lot of weight depending on how things are running in there. So they know what they're doing when they decide to concentrate copious amounts of radiation towards the buildings that you occupy for tens of thousands of hours. And then they're going to want to say, oh, well, this is from that time we looked at his credit card information. He bought a bottle of wine from Costco. So it must have been that. Or he ate seafood. Look at that's where he must have gotten cancer. He has a cell phone and we saw him hit the okay to the terms and conditions. So he knows what happens if he carries a cell phone. That's how they are. This is the type of psychopath you deal with. These people are fucking creepy.
Of having been damaged in any way.
Denial.
But not all the patients survived so long. Dermatitis sufferer Fred Sowers was given 6 times the safe dose. Like half of the patients, he died within 18 months.
Some of the patients might have lived on a relatively normal life. On the other hand, it might have caused early death in certain of the patients.
Manhattan Project scientist Carl Morgan is now a world authority on the dangers of radiation. He remains strongly critical of the plutonium experiment.
It was a terrible gamble with humans. It was something I'm thankful I
Whenever
never
I watch
condoned among
things
those
like this,
scientists.
Whenever I watch things like this, I'm like, it just blows my mind how fucking dumbed down everyone is. I'm like, get the hell out of here. What makes you think that they're not doing the same tired shit still? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, I don't care about whether or not people think I'm mentally ill, the thing that I always wonder is how is this going to affect me in some negative way to come out? But I'll go ahead and put myself on blast, even if there are negative. It's worth it to me. I don't want to feel. I always look at the bigger picture, and I'm like, if I die of cancer, then who did I want to be before I died? And I could say that I've had a lot of integrity, and I had the balls to speak up and not give a fuck what anyone thought or said. Again, I'm very outspoken about this. I don't mince my words. I don't dumb anything down when I talk to you. And so this is why they're just so obnoxious. Like, so annoying. Like, this is one of the most fucked up things you could do to a human being.
Deprivation.
And they're going too far. It's like they're making all these nasty war decisions now from all the shit that they see. Mossad, NSO group, like Israel, all the war, the United States, just nasty things that they do when they can surveil you this way. The types of things that they get away with.
Can we be certain that those who were injected did not go through considerably more suffering than they otherwise would have before they died?
I can't say one way or another. Who knows?
Does that not matter?
It would matter if you knew, but we don't know.
We do know what happened to Elmer Allen. He was injected with twice what was then thought to be a safe level of plutonium. 3 days later, his leg was amputated. The doctors told him he had cancer, but as it turned out, they were almost certainly wrong.
What I think happened is they may have made a mistake and thought he had cancer. Someone did. They put him in the guinea pig protocol. He got the plutonium. They realized he didn't have cancer, and they had to take his leg off to get rid of the plutonium.
Elmer Allen never knew he'd been injected with plutonium, but he suspected something untoward had happened. For years, he told the townsfolk of Italy, Texas, that he'd been guinea pigged in the hospital. But no one believed him, not even his family.
We always thought it was his mind. He was thought to be rather on the crazy side. Usually his most adamant conversations about that would take place when he'd been drinking rather heavily. So it all sounded like the babblings of a crazy man.
In 1977, still claiming to have been guinea pigged, Elmer Allen was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. The man who was codenamed CAL-3...
I bet all of the trash involved was breathing a sigh of relief when they used political psychiatry on him.
By the scientific...
And if it wasn't intentionally political psychiatry, like, it is what happens when you could weaponize people in positions of authority that you are supposed to trust, like police and, mental health specialists. They're so fucking stupid. They're just dumbed down enough that anyone can, use them to their advantage to get away with murder. These people used to encourage me to call the police because they knew what would happen. Either a complicit officer would show up, or one would show up and they would know exactly what to say and do to help send me into an early grave.
Plutonium died in 1991.
To create plausible deniability for the trash who's doing this. And when you look at all the arrests that they had recently on the campus, the Tempe Police Department and the ASU Police Department, they are they become extensions of any immoral thing that they do there. And so they are most definitely weaponized when these things they use them. Like I said, they're glorified janitors.
This particular experiment, I do feel now, robbed me of a relationship with my father. I'll never be able to recapture that. I'll never be able to tell him, I do now understand what you were trying to say. I do understand how you do feel. As far as I'm concerned, my father died on July 18th, 1947. The person that I lived with for 44 years after that was CAL-3, one of America's human nuclear guinea pigs.
Scientists are still split over whether the plutonium experiment was of any value at all. Its defenders maintain it was crucial to the success of the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, of course, they're going to try to defend their bullshit. Where'd that go? Hang on, let's see here. Where's my history?
Final question, why don't they go after criminals? Well, there's a very, very good reason why they don't go after criminals, because criminals are stressful and dangerous. That's why. You know, if you're actually a stalker and you have to stalk a proper organized criminal who's a real psychopath and doesn't have a problem with getting his heavies, you know, putting a bullet into your head or having you swimming at the bottom of the Thames, I mean, it's a pretty stressful job to have, to kind of tailgate those guys, you know. So people tend not to do that. So this will arise naturally. Say, if you just assume that the takedown of civilians and dissidents were not the main target of the secret intelligence agencies, but actually fighting terrorism or actually going after organized crime, yeah, I mean, we've got, you know, evidence to the contrary, but let's just assume for the sake of the argument, then what would naturally happen is that in all systems you have an admixture of false positives by default. So by accident, someone will end up on a list. Oh, sorry, my battery is going flat. Just a second before this dies. You will have an admixture of essentially just innocent people. And as soon as a set of stalkers ends up stalking an innocent person, he would keep very, very, very quiet about it. Because he would say, well, if I now speak up and say this person's innocent, next week I'll be, you know, stalking, you know, Mr. Head of the Mafia, and I really don't want to do that. So just by this process alone, innocent people would be kept on, and if there's no mechanism to weed these out, which, you know, we know that there isn't, then innocent people will be stalked until the end of their life because they're innocent. And the intelligence agencies doing the stalking would very quickly realize that there's absolutely no danger emanating from this person, and they would think, oh, thank God, you know. So this is essentially a system tendency to focus the surveillance on innocent people. And then before long they will say, okay, I'm useless, the intelligence or the surveillance is useless, but what if I earn the system money by just doing maybe weapons testing on them, because then I'm safe and then I just shoot at an innocent person and I know it's okay. You see, so this is another system tendency, and this is a systems tendency, you know. It's and if it's a systems tendency that's inbuilt into this sort of system, it will be unavoidable, and unless there are measurements or measures to stop it, it will just expand. So everything in the intelligence agencies, even if they didn't start off being malicious takedown operations, and you have to remember that they grew out of the surveillance systems of the old royal families, so they didn't have an incentive for public service. Those were takedown systems. Yeah? So in the history of these systems, there's nothing that actually inscribed public service on them. Yeah? Keep that in mind. But even so, right, even if you didn't assume that they started off as malicious takedown operations, even so, there's a systems tendency tending towards the surveillance of innocent people. So either way, you would end up in the situation we have today. And then finally, okay, there's this thing that people at some point hit this, and they say, oh my God, this is so terrible. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, what you can or cannot believe will have no impact on reality. Absolutely no impact on reality. And I mean, I could give you examples, you know, if you really need convincing. But you know, you could drag up historical examples. Could the people in 1912 believe that most of their young men are going to die soon? Probably not. Could that they have believed that so many would die in Britain that Oxford and Cambridge would be depleted of academics? Probably not. And nevertheless, it happened. And then, you know, 25 years later, could people believe that civilized countries in inverted commas like Russia and Germany, because they were civilized for that time, would wipe out a large part of their own population, very soon. No. Nevertheless, it happened. Okay, and then taking more recent examples, right? I mean, could you have believed that thousands of people would be murdered in 9/11? The week before? No, I don't think so. But it happened, and many, many, many other things. I mean, could you have believed that the BBC would announce the collapse of, World Trade Center 7 ahead of time and live on television, and then pull a straight face for 15 years after that? I couldn't have believed it before. Yes, it happened. Could you believe that entire countries would be invaded on trumped up, and trumped up allegations and falsified dossiers? I mean, it happened, right? We know it happened. Could you believe that the British government would, go forward with a war despite the largest ever protest in British history marching through London? I think that was the Iraq War. Yes, it happened. And I could go on and on and on and on and on. So, what you can believe, what you can or cannot believe, has absolutely no bearing on reality. That's the sad truth. Thank you for listening. Other questions will be answered in a separate video. Bye.